Yeah, greetings to you all, comrades. Once again, thank you very much for your presence today with us, and it's always a pleasure to connect. We have become more of like a family, making sure that we meet every day and every week, probably every week, to discuss this. And thank you very much for those who have been with us for the longest time possible, and those who have joined us also. And those who will be watching or going through our video via the YouTube channel, please feel appreciated. You are part of this conversation, and we invite you to join us on some of our Thursdays meetings. So yes, we have been going on with the chapter 2 of the book Conscientism or Conscientism. We have been reading this paragraph per paragraph for the almost 2 years now. But yeah, we are almost done with chapter 2, which is under philosophy and society. And the conversation has been interesting because we've actually been looking at philosophy and society, listening to various philosophies that, of course, are a philosophy that is building up from the philosophy that we came through in chapter 1, where clearly it was about philosophy in retrospect. And we came up clearly with the two main philosophies, which is idealism and materialism. And we have seen this transcending now to chapter 2 on how it plays and how various philosophers try to apply it in some of their assessment of a society. And the most important thing why we'll do this is we want to check at the relationship between philosophy and society, or how philosophy influences societal being, or how philosophy influenced the society. Now, we have been, as I've said, we've looked at two main philosophies, and they have proponents. Of course, in the societal level, we've been looking at various society, the Greek society. We look at the philosophies, of course, that build up from the first chapter on Thales and Berkeley. On chapter 2, we are getting now back. We're taken back to people like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. You come even to the contemporary Western philosophers. We've been looking at John Locke, we have John Stuart Mill, we've been looking at now people like Leibniz and Descartes, and basically we are trying to see how idealism and materialism is playing in society and the conflict it meets in between. And one thing we have also been consistently seeing is how the church is surviving. And the role of church in society, we've also been seeing that over a period of time. And church philosophy is basically the idealism philosophy that puts into hierarchy of being, who is the divine, who is the up there and ordinary citizens. And this division of class, division in society and mentality, some have to be slaves in society, some are masters in society. These ideas that not everybody is equal in the society. All this is actually an idealist-based philosophy. On the other side of it, the materialism brings more of equality of beings. So things like egalitarianism, aspect of humanism, all this now play clearly in terms of materialism. We actually now bring the essence that how do we see in the society? Are we seeing ourselves in a society as equals? If we see ourselves in the society as equal, irrespective of age, gender, or even your education status, or even if you talk your disability or ability, we can view each other as equal components of a society or proponents of a society. Then how would that thinking influence the type of the society we live in? If we have to look at each other in terms of we are different, maybe based on our physical or functional differences, then how is that also going to influence our society? So that is where we have been having this conversation. And Nkrumah has been taking us deeply to try to analyze and understand these intricacies that goes on in various society, the Greek society, for example, and how are those conflicting philosophies or dialectics then influence strife in a society and changes in a society. We've looked at the first question is, do you have a perfect society? Is there something like a perfect society? Is there something like a finite society? And realize that the society is not static. And therefore, those who base their thinking that we have a static society, then it means that they have a perfect society. Society is never perfect. So these are first of the few things you've been listening to all along. And as I've said, I know some, welcome James, you're saying you're late. You're not late. It's just that we've been here for 2 years. So that doesn't mean you're late still. But this is the starting of this session we're doing today. So we are looking at society in those angles. And what type of a society, as we look into this, what type of a society we as Pan-Africans or Africans would like? Would we like a more of idealist society or a materialist society? So today I'll go back a bit and read what we read in the last chapter, where we're looking now in the French or in France, how differences, because some of the philosophers like Descartes are from France. So we're looking at issues of what goes on in France and in terms of how this conflicting thinking is then bringing commotion and revolution in a society. So what we will read today is a paragraph that is highlighted. There are 2 paragraphs that are highlighted. That is what we will be reading today. But permit me just to take a minute to go back to what we read previously, just to read, to catch up with what we are going to read today so that we can connect them. Then I'll ask Sister Tapua if you are able to read for me. After I've read the previous paragraph we discussed, you read for us the paragraph highlighted. There are 2 paragraphs, but they're connected. That's why I've highlighted them together. And I'll also remind members on some of the key guiding questions that led to this conversation today. So permit me first of all to read the past 2 paragraphs. Then I'll read the guiding questions to this paragraph. No, I'll allow Sister Tapua to read this paragraph. Then I read the guiding questions to this paragraph. Then we can open up our room for conversation, discussion. And what we always do here, you share our thinking. So once the paragraph has been read, then we allow members to share what do they think from the read paragraph. Or whatever we've read, what do you think? We need your thinking. Because we believe thinking is the highest level. It's not your understanding. You understand something, you digest it, then you create a thinking, and you're interested in your thinking. So let me go back a bit to the 2 paragraphs. But first of all, permit me to recognize your presence. So permit me to recognize the presence of those with us here virtually, Sister Ida. Permit me to recognize the presence of Sister Myra, General Nunaki, Brother James. I am not sure which James, so you might be, you might introduce yourself, but we're also having Sir Windog and Sister Tapua with us today. So thank you very much, comrades, and feel most welcome to our session today. Brother James, please introduce yourself. I know you've either been new, or you're joining first time, or you've been joining and leaving first. James? James, please feel free to introduce yourself so that we can know who you are. Oh, James is gone. Maybe I scared him with so many words I'd said before. Apologies for that. Let's go to what we read in the previous class. Oh, he's coming back. Okay. So the previous class started with the word by multiplying. And I'll read exactly from that point. It says that by multiplying examples to show how there is a social contention, implicit or explicit. Okay, Sister Tapua has internet issues, no problem. We'll see who will be ready to read for us. So by multiplying examples to show how there is a social contention, either explicit or implicit, in the thoughts of philosophers, the history of philosophy, as I sketched it earlier on, suddenly enjoys transfusion of blood and springs to life. These philosophies appears in situ, not as abstract ethereal systems, but as intellectual weapons implying social purpose. It is evident from the foregoing that Cartesian philosophy represented the most radical break in social sense from the hegemony of the church and her aristocratic allies. The spread of Cartesianism in the form of free thinking therefore ensured that there ensued in France competing philosophy, which engendered an acute social and ideological conflict. On the other hand, there was the oligarchic philosophy of the church. On the other hand, the egalitarian philosophy of Descartes, with its removal of the region of truth from mystic revelation to mathematical and public demonstration. The acute social and ideological conflict so generated could only be resolved by revolution. That's what I was also explaining a bit in my previous introduction. So at this particular moment, let me know who is able to read for us the paragraph.
Yes, I can read. I hope you can hear me.
Please read for us the highlighted paragraph.
Okay. Intellectual tension had been mounting for 100 years or more. The libertines, the French free thinkers, had suffered persecution and crisis after crisis. In 1624, the Parliament of Paris, obedient to the church, restrained certain chemists from disseminating anti-Aristotelian theses. Uncanonical doctrines were proscribed, and their libertine disseminators were abused as immoralists, tricksters, and hypocrites who publicly professed religion, but in private undermined it. The Jesuits touched new heights of violence and rarely when they dealt with the libertines, who naturally did not turn the other cheek, but delivered their ripostes with the full edge of their wit, accusing the schoolmen of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. This dichotomy in French thought cleft the nation seriously, and Huet, Fouché, and Pascal contributed to this dichotomy as against Malebranche and Montaigne. By 1789, the divergence had hardened seriously, and only a revolution could reshuffle French thought and deal it out anew.
Thank you, sister. Take your time a bit as well to members who are present to try to reread this paragraph. I know I'd shared it before, but take your time to reread it again slowly. As I try again to read it again slowly. You can also take your time a bit to start trying to form your thought process so that once we start off, you can be able to share something. So they say that intellectual tension had been mounting for 100 years or more. The more libertines, the French free thinkers, those libertines are the French free thinkers, had suffered persecutions and crisis after crisis. In 1624, the Parliament of Paris, obedient to the church, restrained certain chemists from disseminating anti-Aristotelian theses. And canonical doctrines were proscribed, and their libertine disseminators were abused as immoralists, tricksters, and hypocrites who publicly professed religion but in private undermined it. Now, the Jesuits touched new heights of violence, and rarely when they dealt with libertines who naturally did not turn the other cheek, but delivered the riposte with the full edge at their wit, accusing the schoolmen of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. Very heavy terms. This dichotomy in French thought cleft the nation seriously, and Hood, Faucher, and Pascal contributed to this dichotomy as against Malebranche and Montaigne. By 1789, the divergence had hardened seriously, and only a revolution could reshuffle French thought and deal it out new. At this particular moment, before we start, I would like to first of all explain or go through our side chat Google to get meanings of various words. Then I'll read the thought flow of what we need to discuss, then we can start the class. We can start sharing our thinking. So libertines, a libertine is a person questioning and challenging most moral principles. That's why here they are referred as French free thinkers, such as responsibility or sexual restraint, and which often declare these traits as unnecessary or undesirable or evil. A libertine is especially someone who ignores or even spurns accepted morals and forms of behaviors absorbed by the larger society. The values and practices of libertines are known collectively as libertinism or libertinage, and are described as an extreme form of society. So those are libertines. The Jesuits. Welcome, Sister Nancy.
Thank you.
It's been a long time to see you. Welcome. Now, the Jesuits are the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuit. Order of the Jesuits is a religious order of clerics, regular of pontifical rights for men in the Catholic Church headquartered in Rome. It was founded in 1514 by Ignatius of Loyola and 6 companions, with the approval of Pope Paul III. Today, the Society of Jesus is engaged in evangelization and apostolic ministry in 112 countries. Jesuits work in education, research, and cultural pursuits. That's the meaning of Jesuits. Then we have to look at the person mentioned here called Hood. Now, it's a full name. So let me just get the full name of Hood. But is an abbreviation. Probably somebody can check on Hood, but I think he's a philosopher. So somebody can check on that as I'm trying to check on the rest. There's a Hood. Let me just, I think if I type all of them together, they can bring the meaning. Let's check on all of them. Now, Hood attacked Genesius in section 7. So these are actually French philosophers, but we'll be able to get their full. The person was called Pierre Daniel Hood, and he lived between 1630 to 1721, and the skeptics of his time. But there's also Faucher and Pascal, who is also a philosopher. Pascal. We will also have to look at their history a bit so that you know who they are. But I hope as I'm trying to do this, you're also trying to formulate or form part of your thinking a bit so that you can be able to start sharing with us your thinking. Pascal was a philosopher known as Blaise Pascal. Let's check out Blaise Pascal. So Blaise Pascal was a French mathematician, a physicist, an inventor, philosopher, and Catholic writer. Pascal was a child prodigy who was educated by his father, a tax collector in Rouen. His earliest mathematical work was on projective geometry. He wrote a significant treatise on the subject of conic section at the age of 16. He later corresponded with Pierre de Fermat on probability theory, strongly developed on modern economic and social aspects. I think that's it. So that's about Faucher, Pascal. Then Faucher, I'm also sure is a philosopher, so I'm trying to wind with Faucher. Let me check. It's called Simon Faucher. Now, Simon Faucher was actually born between 1644 to 1696, and he was a French polemic philosopher. His philosophical standpoint was one of academic skepticism. He did not agree with the dogmatism, but didn't resort to Pyrrhonism. Those are keywords indeed, very heavy words for us today. So those are a bit history about these philosophers whom we are actually reading today. And lastly, there's also philosophers like Malebranche and Montaigne. Welcome, Brother Carrington. Now, Nicolas Malebranche was also a French oratorian, Catholic priest, and a rationalist philosopher. In his works, he sought to synthesize the thought of St. Augustine and Descartes in order to demonstrate the active role of God in every aspect of the world. So you see, this side of the philosophers are now idealist. And from this other side, you are having the mathematicians who are becoming more materialist. So this is the conversation we're trying to get here. If we can maybe have that in a nutshell. So I've done a brief of some of the information about some of the persons mentioned in this chapter. And with that, now permit me to just briefly, without taking much of your time, to contextualize what we are supposed to be the context of our reading today. One is that we are looking at the role of intellectual tension in shaping societal dynamics and transformation. And second, we want to understand the persecution of free thinkers and the struggle for intellectual freedom in historical context. We also want to understand how philosophical conflicts influence and ultimately initiates revolutionary change. We also want to look at the parallels between historical intellectual dichotomies, e.g. the French libertines versus schoolmen, and the contemporary ideological divides in Africa. And we're looking again at the lessons for Africa from the philosophical and the societal reorganization of the 18th century in France. Key questions are like, for example, how do the intellectual and ideological tensions contribute to societal transformation or revolution? 2, what strategies can be employed to navigate and reconcile ideological divides within a society? And 3, in what ways can Africa learn from historical examples of intellectual persecutions and the resultant revolutionary changes? And 4, how can philosophy be used as a tool for decolonization and the reshaping of African society? And last but not least, what role should intellectuals play in driving revolutionary and societal change? So thank you very much, comrades. I hope I've taken my time, but I hope it was relevant again. Try to put this in context and also to help us freely share our thinking in this session. So welcome, Brother Carrington and Sister Nancy. I recognize your presence. Who is ready to go first? Who is ready to start sharing the thinking? I believe I've taken some time for you to have some space also to share your thinking here. Yes, Awindok?
Greetings, everybody. Uncanonical doctrines were proscribed. So, can anybody help me with uncanonical? I tried to check it up, but I don't understand it. It is something in the line of against standing orders, against standing rules. Should I understand it in that context?
Yes. The canonical has to do with the agreed position that the church takes on issues. So if you're being uncanonical, you're going against what the Pope and that group of people have decided is right, is the truth, and the way that the church should handle certain issues. That's canonical. Uncanonical is the opposite.
Thank you.
It's anti-church or anti-Bible or biblical in any way. Brother Sawindok?
Is it anti-biblical or is it just anti any agreed upon standing rules?
It's on standing rules, because most Christian churches will not challenge the Bible. It's the interpretation and then how they conduct themselves around the rules. So
Sister Tapua?
on contraception. There is nothing specific in the Bible about contraception as
Sister
it is
Tapua,
today. Yes.
Sister Tapua, we lost you somewhere, somehow there. Can you maybe?
Oh, all right. I hope you've got the example that I gave, that the Catholic Church has a position on contraception as it is today. And therefore, they've taken a canonical position, a canonical decision that all Catholics must follow. But there's nothing biblical about the use of contraception specifically and how it should be used. So the church has to come up with certain rules and ideas of how a Christian should conduct themselves.
Thank you.
Right.
And chemists, as it is it as per the meaning of chemist, or does it refer to other intellectuals and scholars and academics in that context? Anyone on that one? Brother Pigeon.
Sorry,
I
sorry,
think,
could you?
I think it can be in line with the medical explanation of as what you know chemists being. Oh, Brother Carrington, yes, go ahead.
Yes, these are the physical chemists, from the subject in school. If I remember correctly, this is the period where we start to think about elements being more than four, earth, air, fire, water, Aristotelian physics. Now we start to get more things, and this chemistry is this older subject, alchemy, and starting to identify more elements like metals, like gases, etc. And this is probably a problem with Aristotelian science, which is the basis again of Christian science, as I understand. But this can be confirmed.
I also think that Louis Pascal is known in the chemistry books as somebody who, was it penicillin? I wanted to ask Brother Carrington, is it penicillin he invented?
So this Pascal is a
Even smaller
mathematician.
piece.
Oh, okay, there are two
The other one
Louis
was
Pascals then.
Pasteur, Louis Pasteur.
Oh,
Of
Pasteur,
pasteurization,
okay.
yeah, of
Yes,
milk.
so sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries, Sister Ida. Yeah.
Okay, Brother Carrington, please go ahead and share your thinking with this chapter paragraph.
Thank you very much, Brother Pigeon. Brothers and sisters, thank you very much for having me. This paragraph is particularly difficult. These are, I don't want to call them minor, but not as famous French philosophers. But again, there is this problem of the Renaissance in France and the Catholic Church. France in the 1500s, 1400s to basically 1800s is under very strong control of the church and the monarchy, specifically the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has been having a lot of Platonic, Aristotelian, but more so, I'm looking for this philosopher's name. It's in the paragraph. What's his name? Saint Augustine. So a lot of philosophy of the church is based on Saint Augustine and other Christian philosophers who base their ideas mostly on Plato and Aristotle. And you have to remember that this is a tradition that has basically been holding for, let's say, 1,500 years, okay, since the development of Christianity in the late Roman Empire. So these ideas have been at hold for a very long time. They have been the main ideas, how you organize European societies, for a very, very long time, for millennia. Now, because of the Renaissance, the rebirth, the rediscovery of science and investigation and natural philosophy, you end up in a situation where there's a bit of a tension. And this class of French thinkers called the Libertines I'm not sure, somebody confirm whether the famous French philosopher Voltaire is one of them or is in of this tradition. Basically, free thinkers who are wealthy meet up in castles or in coffee houses, but more so in castles in France. They sit down and have open discussions. Discussions like this one, where there is no predetermined destination we want to go, and there is no official truth. Okay? So it is about everybody just voicing their opinion like we are all voicing our opinion. And therefore, because of this free thinking, so-called free thinking, you end up in tension. You end up with tension, in tension with the church. Why are you ending up in tension with the church? You're ending up in tension with the church because the church is as an institution is not founded on free thinking. Structurally, it is founded on doctrines. And doctrines, practices, thought give the church its structure. And as we have said, this structure has been maintaining and developed over 1,000 years. So, by definition, if I come with my own style of architecture, by definition, if I come with my own style of language, with my own style of thinking, it is going to introduce a lot of tension because people are used to doing things a certain way, i.e., the doctrine. And Sister Tapua, I think, and Sister Ida have explained it very well that canonical, is about exactly that, that an interpretation of the Bible that fits with the doctrines of the Catholic Church. So that is very important. You have to interpret the Bible in a certain way that it fits with other stories that the Catholic Church tells. For example, the very, very famous papal bulls. Yeah, these utterances are issued by the Pope because the Pope is thought to there's a word for it, there's a rule for it in the Catholic Church. Somebody remind me, please. The Pope is infallible. Okay, the Pope cannot make a mistake. So what the Pope says is added to the doctrine of the church. And if you live your life according to the doctrines of the church, in addition to the Bible, so these are extra rules, guidelines to help you live as a proper Christian in Europe. If you live according to these guidelines and rules, you are living a canonical life. Yes, the canon. So the canon is important. The canon are rules that the church has that basically are not included in the Bible. However, we have this problem of mostly urban, free-thinking French philosophers. Okay, the next important thing is the Jesuits. The institution of the Jesuits is, and I would really invite everybody to go and read up on the Jesuits. Ignore there's a lot of conspiracy theory. Just the historical institution itself is very, very interesting. The Jesuits are scholars, okay? They are an institution within the Catholic Church who are basically concerned with scholarship. They do an investigation, they do theological investigations, they do scientific investigations, they do multiple things. Okay, but typically they carry out their science, their philosophy, their etc on the basis of the canon of the church, because they are a Catholic institution. Okay, they are, because they are powerful and central to the church, they're thought to be responsible for a lot of disorder in the world, but typically their official function is exactly this. A lot of the doctrines of the Catholic Church are derived from Jesuit work. Now, these scholars have been in, you have to realize that these scholars have been in charge of philosophy, of theology, of the economy, of almost everything in society, because they are thought to be the most intelligent, the wisest, the most educated, okay, in France and in Europe for those 1,000 years. No, they were not formed a long time ago. Can you scroll up? But basically, the Brother Pigeon, scroll up the year of foundation. I've forgotten completely. 1540. So in 1675, the Jesuits are around 100 years old. But basically, they have taken upon this work of defining scholarship for the Catholic Church. And this brings them into very serious conflict with these free thinkers. Why? Because the free thinkers sometimes come up with ideas that are in contradiction with the church, with these chemists, these chemistry investigators being among the first people to do this. In the coming paragraphs, we will probably see this problem become bigger and bigger as scientific knowledge begins to diverge more and more from the doctrines, not just the Bible, but from the doctrines themselves of the Catholic Church. And it is important. You can say the Bible is quote unquote objective, and doctrines are political. Doctrines are a tool of social control, because Jesus did not say you have to tithe your money to this specific church, but the Catholic Church is very specific with these things, and therefore doctrines are a political system, not just philosophical or theological. For the second paragraph, I know nothing about almost all these philosophers, so I will need to read up much more. I'm noting them down before I can say anything useful. So thank you very much, Brother PG.
Thank you, Brother Carrington, for that. Of course, I had also shared a bit about the second philosophers on the second paragraph, some of them being mathematicians. In fact, the first class of philosophers are Roman scientists, mathematicians, and the rest. But the second class of the philosophers, the Malebran, are appearing to be more of the idealists and those in spirits and the rest. But I think you are bringing something that is very important here, which I'd like to just engage you a bit further. But I know now members are also able to form some thinking around this. Brother Carrington is just sharing his thinking, and therefore you're also free to share your thinking. And yes, so we are sharing our thinking. He's not teaching anything, but if you have any question on what he has explained, feel free also to ask, as I want to engage on some few things. Brother Carrington, Aristotelian thesis is being mentioned here.
Yes.
We have come across Aristotle for the previous paragraphs. And I think Aristotle was playing two sides. Unlike Plato, who was very clear, and Socrates, who was very clear. Socrates was a clear advocate of materialism, and Plato was a clear advocate of idealism. I remember sometimes back when you say you like the thinking of Aristotle, which Brother Kwame said that Aristotle was just a thief who plagiarized everything else. Now, I don't know. There's something we came across called Platonic thinking. I think there's Platonic philosophy that then was the foundation of the church. You see, because church believed more of what was properly in line with what Plato was saying. Aristotle, of course, I know he supported a bit of that division and classism of differences of people within society, but was it the one who was believed again to have brought form back from heaven to earth, the forms that were taken up by Plato?
So yes, exactly. So Aristotle is trying to make Platonic ideal forms more grounded. So yes, that is exactly it. He tried to remove this idealism in Platonism. That is why he came up with those 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and I think the 5th one called quintessence, and said everything in the universe comes from these things and nothing more.
Why could there be then a conflict between that is thinking with the chemists, or this is a conflict with this thinking in regards to supporting the church thinking?
Yes, my understanding, and somebody please confirm this because I'm not sure. I'm just inferring from the statement. My understanding is that because of chemists, and chemists in this period are building up elements which will come to form the periodic table of elements that we normally learn. And since the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, are part of church doctrine, this is seen possibly to be a problem.
The church got their doctrines on the basis of Aristotelian definition of forms on earth.
Yes.
Can you explain those forms a bit in church level, if you can, if you know, I don't know.
So I need to read like these early Christian philosophers. They're the people who do this work, Augustine, etc. But I have not read them very seriously. The idea is that you can explain things like, what do the Christians call this thing? The fall from grace, right? Being that human beings have stopped being fire or air, and therefore cannot inhabit the heavens, and we have come to be grounded by earth. But our soul is still fire, so one day it will go up. There were people speculating such things, and that way, slowly by slowly, Aristotelian science especially seeps into Catholic doctrine, just like Platonic ideals actually are the bedrock of Christianity.
Pastor kana muruga ubika one plate inosenza. All right. Okay.
Sorry for that, Brother Carrington. Just before I let you go, I think Sister Tapo was unmuted, maybe mistakenly. But before I let you go, just one clarification, then other members can come in. Now, I think basically what you're trying to read here is a continuation of dialectics, actually conflicts.
Yes.
And the conflict that have ensued from the church thinking. Basically, if you talk of idealism, I think it's grounded on church. Let's just believe in that. Because the church thinking and the foundation vis-a-vis the materialists or those who want to be free thinkers. And I think church is trying to create for us what they tend to believe to be either perfect society and how the society should be in a perfect form and anything like that. But the free thinkers are trying to challenge these, and I see here that there is a level of serious conflict. And serious conflict, and this has been, remember sometimes when you say that the church, I don't know, ran with the hair and whatever, like the church has been playing both earthly and heavenly.
Yes.
Anytime it fits them. When it fits them to be heavenly, they are heavenly. When it fits them to be earthly, they are earthly. But then they are trying to have a serious conflict in a society. That conflict, which you said, sometimes back we said that a society is in a continuous strife. The society is not that peaceful, that cohesive, but there will always be strife within societies. And this strife is now appearing here. Now the question I want to maybe put before is that we are finding this to be the foundation of a revolution. Now, what form of this revolution could it be like? I think this is a question we asked last time. The revolution now that happened is, can you maybe, from your thinking, how are you seeing the revolution? Because now is the church here and the materialist here. If the revolution was to happen, do we change the things or the system? And did it really happen? Because the struggle between the church and the free thinkers is existing up to date. What do you think?
Yes, that is exactly correct, Brother Pigeon. So first, and that is another good way of interpreting. This is an excellent interpretation of these two paragraphs. The dialectic, and I think this book, if so far this is my interpretation, but everybody feel free to correct me. This book is about philosophically, of course, it is about a lot of things, but philosophically, fundamentally, it's about the struggle in human beings between the philosophies of materialism and idealism. And this is manifesting in different societies in different ways. So we are in early modern period European history, and we still see the same things that we saw in Greek society, right? That there are some philosophers who think materially, there are some philosophers who think ideally, and there are serious conflicts between the two people. And how they think about society also is deeply implicated by how they think about philosophy. And this is another manifestation. But I guess what you will see is that the stakes, if we say so, keep on being raised and raised higher and higher and higher. Entire societies, catastrophes will come because of the push and pull between materialism and idealism. Now, in our society, what do we do? I think, and people feel free to correct me, I think that the struggle between idealism and materialism is not just in society, it is in our heads. I like telling people that I am not very religious, but if you take me to a place where there's, I don't know, signs of devil worship, I don't know, a bull with horns and red and blood, you know what I'm talking about. I am very superstitious and I will run away from that place. So even in my head, idealism is fighting materialism. This is a struggle and it is a condition. What you would want is your society, and societies that are typically dominated by materialist philosophies. And remember, materialist philosophy is not I want a Lamborghini, I want a sports shoe. Materialist philosophy is that the material conditions of society, i.e. whether it can access food, it can access healthcare, shelter, clothing, are the most important things. Things that we can have a grasp on are the most important things, that we prioritize physical objects, physical benefits, rather than waiting for a paradise, for example. Now, a society that is materialist, that thinks of it this way, is very, very hard to control by any monarchy or any theocracy. It is just very difficult to control because people are concerned about their real life conditions, if you say. And this is normally the occasional space where we call revolution, the toppling of the table. An idealist society becomes a materialist one. An idealist society based on, I don't know, blind faith to elders, blind faith to gods, blind faith to authority is toppled, and somebody starts asking, but my cousin cannot go to university, but my mother cannot go to hospital, I need these things fixed. That becomes a materialist society, and this becomes a revolution. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Carrington. See hands are up. In case of anything, you always come back. Sister Ida?
I just wanted to know if anybody knew who the Jesuits were in the names that have been called. Was Fouché and Pascal Jesuits? Because I know the Jesuits were teachers, so they say about the school teachers. Jesuits, okay. Because they've given four names there, and I'm thinking, oh, are they Jesuits?
No, they were teachers, as you were saying. I think Brother Carrington has talked about them extensively in terms of who they were.
Yeah, but as you can see, four names that are mentioned, does he say who were Jesuits? Did you say who were Jesuits, Brother Carrington?
I don't know any of those names, so I can't tell unless I find out.
Okay.
The founders are here. There was Saint Ignatius of Loyola, Saint Francis Xavier, Saint Peter Faber, Nicolas Bodaliga, Diego Lainez, Simao Rodriguez, Alfonso Salmeron. And it was founded in Paris, France, formalized in Rome. And it was Order of Clerics Regular of Pontifical Rights. Its headquarters is Generalate Bago Espirito, which is in Rome. So that's all about it.
Okay. Because I know that.
June 25, Wait, by 2025, worldwide, they have 13,768 members.
May we have the perfect backup, please?
Yes?
I hear you. I hear you. I know that they went round teaching, and they were sort of. I thought they were sort of men who went round as, like they say, school teachers or teachers.
Yeah, I
I was
think
just wondering who amongst those they were calling. You know. Anyway, thank you. Thank you.
I think they are teachers, based on what Carrington is saying, because they did a lot of the research and all that academic aspect of the church. So I think they were teachers as well, because they could go out to do the mission, education, and all those other things. So they were teachers as well.
I think that's what they were known for. Anyhow, in later years.
Thank you for that. But please go ahead and share your thinking.
Who, me? Oh, no. I'm just interested in following what Brother Carrington was saying, and then I was remembering, Sister Topo has put her hand up, so I was just remembering that, you know, they seem to have been very famous for having boys' schools where they were very tough on the boys, sort of things, but you know, they were very learned. That's what I think of, remember of
Yes.
Jesuits.
Education. Yeah.
Yes, education. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Sister Tapo?
Thank you. I hope yes. Okay, I think my contribution is that with regards to question number 1, our role is to bring the truth from mystical to mathematical and public demonstrations, because we can clearly see in our own societies how church and mysticism and trying to find answers to our everyday problems answers are sought from the church, from the spiritual. People want to go and have an explanation there. And it's now got so bad in Zimbabwe, for example, where people can't afford medicals and they can't afford to send their kids to school. They can't afford to think straight. They think there's a mystery. There's something that is affecting me because I can't find a job or I'm losing my job. And you find that until we help people to think, we have to help people to think through what the problems are for them to realize how to resolve those problems. This is why free thinkers like journalists and
Sister Tapua, we lost you again. Hope she'll be able to come back. Sister Tapua, we've lost you. Let me unmute you. Let me mute you so that you can come back. Sister Nancy, go ahead, please.
other people would, because what you're doing, the mathematical and public, yes.
Yeah, we had
you've lost
we had lost you a bit, but you can come up again. We lost you.
Oh, all right.
But
Do you want me back on?
Yeah, just proceed.
All right. Now, I was saying, in our societies today, free thinkers are the people who are prosecuted because the current governments that we have in Africa want to encourage the mysticism that truth is somewhere else. Truth is mystical. Truth is in the church. So they are in cahoots with the church, and therefore they find it convenient to prosecute journalists who are at the front in bringing the truth to the public, and in any other free thinkers for that matter, which is why when they're sent to court for anything, they are persecuted, they are treated unfairly. And this is why it's important for governments that have gone awry to employ unjust means and to capture the judiciary. Free thinking also introduces the other side of any argument. And a lot of the governments that we have want people to buy into the idea, for example, in Zimbabwe, that we are under sanctions, when When Trump did what he did, people then suddenly got to know that there are 22,000 nurses being paid for by America, and that some of the medication that we have comes from there, from the funding. Of course, there's complications in terms of explaining how they get that money to give it to us. But they would rather have the simple, and they want us to support. In my response to question number 4 is the contemporary divides in Africa are between the Bible, religion, the church, and the scientifically proven facts on the other side, which is why the Jesuits were being accused of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. Because what the church did after the chemists started unraveling things, came up with their own intellectuals who would support the church's position. So this then juxtaposes the pure scientists who have no leaning towards any religious body, and then the contemporary, the biblical religious scientists like the Jesuits, which is why there's in the last paragraph, this dichotomy in French thought cleft the nation seriously. So you have Hewitt, Faucher, and Pascal on the one side, who are scientists, and they don't have any leaning towards the church. And then you have the other who are trying to support the church position. My position is the lessons we have for Africa are the battle that we're trying to fight is with the church, with ideas. Remember, we've always been saying what we need to do is to get people out of this colonial mentality. It's not just a colonial mentality. It's also led by religion, which is a very sad situation for me because I was brought up by Jesuits and I was very proud of having been educated by Jesuits. The Jesuits that I came across supported the Liberation War and education of Black people and so on. But the way religion has pervaded the psyche of people, even in places where people claim they're independent and so on, is just frightening. It's absolutely frightening. People will go and ask for assistance for anything, including a job. They don't understand why they don't have a job. They don't understand why they are ill. They don't understand why they can't afford medication. They will start saying it's spiritual, it's something else that's happening. And the government tends to encourage that because they don't have the infrastructure to support the people. So our battle, I think, is to expose the truth, to bring it out, and to make sure it's in the public domain. We need to help people to understand their own situation. That's where I'll end for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Tapua. Sister Nancy, please go ahead.
Yes, so it's really hard to follow those comments. That I think it was really brilliantly stated. Just the only thing I would add to that is I think some of these philosophies that we're looking at today, we're talking about a long time ago. And of course, everybody attempted to understand and explain reality. And it served, I think, the limited understanding that people had at the time that these philosophies were developed. But today we have a lot more information than we did in 1789, for instance. And we have a lot more understanding of science and just the way that the world works, the way that reality is transformed. So, we don't have to rely on some of the mechanisms that some of the philosophers use to try to explain reality. And the unfortunate thing is that some of this is still being imposed on us. And I think it's absolutely correct that the church is in collaboration with the certain class interests, the capitalist class, as a way of stifling the understanding that people have of society and of social change. And we're being held back by that. And I think one thing, the brilliance of Nkrumah is in recognizing that there are people who embrace various religious ideas, whether it's out of traditional Africa or Christian experience or Islamic experience. That these things are very much part of Africa's reality, current reality. But what happened with the European colonizers is they completely negated pre-colonial African traditions that we use that were just as valid and served our needs and gave us a framework through which to understand our community, to understand our humanity, and understand the world at large. But these things were denigrated by colonizers, and many of us have come to believe that these philosophers that are being referenced in this book, that their ideas were superior to our ideas, which is not factual. So we, I think, as Africans, have to certainly look to our own philosophies as well as those of others in imagining what our political future is going to look like, and how we interpret the world. But the important thing is the idea of materialism, which again, that was not well understood in 1700, and the potential to understand it is much clearer and much greater today. And this has to be the guiding force in determining how we interpret the world, and determining how we analyze our conditions, and how we look to resolve the problems that plague us. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Nancy, for drawing our attention to, of course, Nkrumah's position in regards to religion. Because I think our church and the rest, I think is a position, either we've covered it in chapter 1 or we haven't. Nkrumah recommends that, therefore, a state or a nation or a country should be secular and not religious in any way. That's what he recommends, because taking in consideration all those other aspects. In fact, this consciousness philosophy is believed to be a philosophy that then take into recognition both aspects of Christian, Islamic, and traditional African religion. You see? And another thing you pointed, which is also very important, is that we say from materialist position, and the position Nkrumah takes, Nkrumah in this book and this philosophy of consciousness do not take what we call an hardcore materialist position. Consciousness takes a middle position between the discourse between the materialist and hardcore idealist. And consciousness then says as follows, that matter is actually the primary reality, which materialism should be our primary concern. But in that process, it says it is not the core reality. It's only primary. It's not the only thing that exists. Apart from our material condition, our spiritual welfare also exists. But he also tries to connect them, that spiritual fulfillment or nourishment is also material in their nature, just that it's in another category of not physical, but probably abstract, but still elements of material. And this he explained in chapter 1 we come across what we call divergent. I can remember the process, categorical conversion. Use the word categorical conversion, which means when you start with this material condition of the persons, which is physical condition of the people, of a society, of a country, if you concentrate on the physical condition of a society, then the abstract conditions of a society will automatically be achieved, which means if you want to look for maybe a happy society, a loving society, a generous country, that society cannot be that generous in abstract if their physical welfare is not taken into consideration. So that is the position that then philosophical materialism assumes, which people tend sometimes to confuse by saying that materialism is love of material wealth. It's not. It only recognizes that without your material welfare being taken care of, which means if you don't eat, if you don't have a full stomach, even for you to be spiritual, even for you to go and sing, even for you to go and worship and praise, it's very hard. But if it is possible to ensure that you are fed, to ensure that you are satisfied, then you can even go extra mile to start fasting, worshiping, and doing the rest. But other standpoint of idealists believe that if you have spiritual nourishment, then they forget about your physical nourishment. That's why some can go even fast for 30 days and you hear they died in the forest fasting, because they neglect their physical welfare to an extent of pursuing the spiritual welfare, which then weakens the physical welfare and they automatically die. So philosophical materialism do not actually object spirituality or existence of spiritual ideas and the rest. But it only says, for example, ideas in that case come from the brain. And somebody cannot even form the ideas and the thinking if their brain is not stable. And the brain itself is physical. So there cannot exist ideas without a brain. So this is the argument that consciousness brings in force. But then you realize that the idealists take another position. The idealists tend to believe that there is no physical, all is there is spiritual. And the argument have been placed by idealists, some of them have joined us here several times, some of them have walked away, is that we are spiritual, everything is spiritual. But again, where is the spirit in the physical part of the body? It's in the abstract level. It's the unseen. But that unseen cannot exist without the seen. You cannot say that somebody is spiritual without that somebody, the body of the person. So this has been the technical contention between the materialist and hardcore idealist. And this is where, Sister Amananza, as you're saying, is where the conversation also stems in. So yes, as we are even seeing the differences, the contentions between the church and those who are free thinkers or the scientists, we are not saying that we don't recognize the existence, just that we want to put what is primary and what is either secondary and the rest. Sister Eda, I'll go to you, then I think Brother Sir Windhoek hand was up, and permit me to recognize the presence of our chair. Brother Kwame is with us here. Brother Kwame, welcome and feel free to come in anytime. And also Elder Glory is with us. I think also there's also Senior Prince who has also joined us. So let's go ahead. Brother Kwame, feel free to come anytime. Sister, then
okay.
Sir, in that order.
Okay. I was going to. Well, I put my hand up because I thought that Sister Tapua had slightly mixed up the Jesuits and the Libertines. Even, but then later she told us she went to a Jesuit school, so she definitely knows more than I do about them. But I think that this paragraph, I mean, the Jesuits started as a religious order. I think they came from the church and continued, branched out and became Jesuits. And the bit that when it goes where it says that. I think it's unconditional doctrines were prescribed and their libertines, disseminators were abused as immoralists, tricksters, and hypocrites who publicly professed religion, but in private undermined it. And I think that sounds like the meaning of the word libertine. That they, they twist and turn slightly. And I thought that the Jesuits were the ones who continued with the church's strict morals, but were even stronger than the the current church that they branched out from. So I think that's what it's saying in this. I stand corrected. I'm happy to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who feel to come up on what Sister is saying, feel free to come in. But Sawindok, let's go to Sawindok first. Sawindok? Sawindok?
Yeah, I'm in the same line with Sister Ida. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm almost in the same line with Sister Ida. That line there, the Jesuits touched new heights of violence and raillery when they dealt with the libertines. I'm a bit confused there. Who is accusing the other of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness before we come to this dichotomy in the next paragraph?
Very interesting question. Oh,
I would like then to continue on that, because I think that it's the Jesuits accusing the libertines of forgery and or the rest of the words that were mentioned: forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. Because I think the Jesuits were very, very strict on things, to the extent that maybe it was a time of something of the period. But I think they used to whip people almost. I know it talks about rapiers. Rapiers are swords. I don't think they went as far as being swords. It says they use it's almost like they use their tongue as a rapier, as a sword. So, thank you.
Sister Ida, just to try to put this in context, in the first place, if you read the arguments or the abuses of immorality, tricksters, and hypocrites, is actually the Jesuits, those who are pro-church, who are actually accusing the libertines, who are the free thinkers, of being immorals, because the free thinkers do not want to conform with the canonical, the so-called moral doctrines. Now, in this second abuse, you see now the Jesuits were now attacking the libertines, and said the libertines who naturally did not turn the other cheek, but delivered their reports with the full edge of the wheat, accusing the Jesuits, the schoolmen who are schooling and who are going through the process of research and the church thing, of forgery in their research, of vanity, and of emptiness and uselessness in whatever they were trying to do as Jesuits in regards to their contribution to the church. But I think Brother Kwame can be able to come in and talk to.
Well, I disagree with what you just read. I've read it the other way around, that the Jesuits were the one who were fighting the libertines as in the wrong, forgery, vanity. Oh no, I've said that bit. Whatever you read, I think that it was the Jesuits who were fighting the libertines, thinking that the libertines were hypocrites, etc. Thank you. I'll stop there because I may be wrong.
Brother Kwame can feel free to come into in line with that, but permit me to please touch on something that's been spoken here. Please allow me to go to other members here. I'll come back to the hands that are up, but let me get to. There's a member who has been with us here for some while, General Munaki. You have been here. Please share your thinking. And Sister Mary, I think you said you will not be able to contribute, but feel free to come in when you're in a position to contribute. General Munaki.
Yes, my Lord, give thanks, give thanks. Me, what I can quote our legendary African teacher, Dr. Henry Clark, in his other documentaries when he said he wanted to write a book. I don't think he ever wrote this book because he passed away long ago. But in this book, he was going to talk about the topic. The title of the book was the bastard as a factor in society. So basically in that book, he talks about how the foreign men from outside of Africa come to Africa and sleep with our women, and then the children that are born there become rebellious to the African culture, etc., etc. So he explains that thing in that thing of Haiti. I'm just trying to explain this issue of the Jesuits, how deep it goes. So this issue of Haiti is that the black people that got from the black man of Haiti, what they did is that when the Haitian Revolution started, these same black people whose fathers are white are the ones who prevented the Haitian Revolution by toppling the leaders of the Haitian Revolution and then adopting a French constitution and then the French white supremacy culture. You see? And then from that on, with the issue of Christophe and them, I won't get into that details. But eventually it led to Haiti till this day not reaching their full revolution because of that error they made, the mulattoes. So what I'm trying to say is that the Jesuits didn't just come in the African societies and other indigenous societies just to come and put missionary camps, destroy the men, and teach the women their Christianity. No, they came there also, and they also, those children that were born from these black women, they took them into the missionaries. And then they used these children as spies, you see, from the mother's side, which is the African side, to get information what the family is up to, and then to use that to further sabotage the African development. You see, so Dr. Henry Clark, yeah, as I say, it's a very deep topic, but I'm just saying it because it's in line with the Jesuits, because misunderstand even the French are Jesuits. You see, basically the whole of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Sister Mali, I'll come back. Now I'm coming back to you, Sister Tapua. Permit me to go to Sister Marlin first. Sister Marlin? Sister Marlin?
I'm just listening. I came on late, so I'm trying to get my head around it.
Okay, Senior Prince. Senior Prince.
Yes, Comrade Pingbi.
Yes, please share with us your thinking in regards to this text. If you're able, if you're in a position, if you're not, you can just let me pass, but please share with us what you think.
I'll come back later, please.
Okay, well noted. Now, Elder Glenn, you've just joined. Are you in a position to share the thinking, or you'll also take some time? Elder Glenn? Oh, you said your mic is not working. But I see you have mic now. If you want to share something, please come back anytime and share something with us. Let me go now to Sister Tapua, and then I'll welcome Brother Kwame. Sister Tapua?
Yes, thank you. I'm going back to that sentence, the Jesuits touched new heights of violence and raillery when they dealt with the Libertines. Right. After that whole sentence, which has additional information, the word who there refers to the Libertines. It's explaining why the Jesuits became violent. So the Jesuits touched new heights of violence and raillery when they dealt with the Libertines. Why? Because the Libertines naturally did not turn the other cheek, but delivered their riposte with full edge of their wit. In other words, the Libertines would not be dampened down. They would not bow down to the Jesuits, which is why the Jesuits resorted to violence. And the Libertines were accusing the schoolmen, and the schoolmen here are the Jesuits, of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. Because what the Jesuits were now doing is, they were saying they're equal to the Libertines because they are also researching, but whatever they were researching, they were suspected by the Libertines of twisting the information that they were finding to suit the church doctrine. That's what resulted in the violence, because the Libertans would not be tamed, and they were rebelling against the position that the church had always taken. That's how I read it.
Thank you. Brother Kwame? Brother Kwame?
Maybe before Brother Kwame comes in.
Okay, go ahead, Sawindok, Brother Kwame. Please hold on a bit for Sawindok. Sawindok?
The Jesuits, are they the same as the schoolmen?
You're asking if the Jesuits are the schoolmen?
Yeah.
Yes, they're the schoolmen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Brother Kwame, please now come in.
Okay, so right, so I've been trying to listen before I come in, so I understand how the conversation has evolved till now. So, what is the? I know we are all sharing our thinking, but what is the? How has the discussion evolved?
Welcome aboard this service to
Pigeon,
Brighton.
how has it?
Next station is Polgate.
How has the
Please keep all
discussion
personal
evolved as far
belongings with you
as
at all times.
you can say
If you
as
see
as
something
one
that
someone
doesn't look
sharing?
right, report it to a member of staff.
Brother Carrington, please, are you able to put Brother Kwame into context of the discussions we've been having? Because, of course, people have been sharing their thinking, so you cannot have a constructed direction it takes, but maybe. Or Sawindok, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the contention here lies squarely, as what Brother Kwame is asking, lies squarely on this sentence of the Jesuits up to the uselessness. I think that's what he's trying to know, how we have come to this conversation. But maybe earlier I did not complete my question, because my question wanted to ask the dichotomy in the next paragraph. Which dichotomy is this one that is referred to? This dichotomy in French fought, cleft the nation seriously. Which dichotomy is that one? Is it the Jesuits accusing the Libertines, or does it go back to the beginning of the paragraph?
Okay, thank you, Sawindok. If to come in a bit and also to put the conversation into context for what Brother Kwame has asked, is that we've been having differences in terms of thinking and the philosophies before. And even when you looked at the previous paragraphs that you've read, remember people like Leibniz and Descartes were silent a bit because they feared the full wrap of the church. Then Nkrumah goes ahead by starting this paragraph to us, is telling us that the intellectual tension continued. Now, intellectual tension is now continuing within the same, now going to the French society. And what we've been discussing here for a period of time on these two paragraphs is the tension between the free thinkers who are against the so-called canonical orders or doctrines, who are against the thinking of the idealists of the church. That is what we've been discussing, and how that contention, which you call the social contention, which we discussed sometimes back there, is now depicting itself in this context of French and in the context of the church as well. Now, we've also been looking at now the exact differences, where we have one side of free thinkers who are also academics or academicians, or those who go into papers, the scientists and the rest. Well, we are having a church also forming its own scholarly class or group of people who also study their things and back up the Jesuits. And then there's no accusation, because we realize that what we've been discussing is that these free thinkers are uncanonical. So they actually don't subscribe to those canonical doctrines of rules and those whatever procedure that are made to the Catholic Church. And because they don't prescribe to this, those people prescribe to that, especially now the Jews and those of the church thinkers now try to label these people as immoralists because they don't subscribe to the laid down morals of the church. They're either say they're tricksters because whatever they're trying to think is either they're tricking the society, and they're also accused of being hypocrites, that they are halfly professing religion and halfly professing private thinking. And that's what,
Okay.
yes, so
Yeah, you've got,
Go ahead.
so you've given me a kind of perspective on what how discussion has been. Satafa, do you want me to continue, or do you want to chip in something before I continue? Satafa, did you want to chip in something before I continue? All right, Satafa is not responding. Can you hear me okay, brother Pigeon?
Yes, I can hear you. Permit me to ask maybe Sister Tapua on your behalf. Sister Tapua, can you hear me? Brother Kwame is asking whether you want to share something before he proceeds. Sister Tapua? Okay, Brother Kwame, now you can proceed.
Okay, so the Jesuits, as we are reading, are a religious order of the Catholic Church.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh.
go on. Yeah, go on.
Okay, no, I wanted to say the highlighted paragraph is an explanation of the two sentences preceding that paragraph, because it's talking about the removal of the region of truth, a whole region of truth from mystical revelation, which was in the church. It's in the church's hands through mathematical and public demonstration. In other
Yes.
words, what they're fighting over here is the truth. So
Yes.
when the Jesuits are established and take the side of the church, they're actually using scientific knowledge, or in quotation marks, scientific knowledge, to support their position. And I think for us, this is really important, because throughout the history of Africa, we've had science used to justify position that the colonialists took, and is the same thing, and is the use of violence to subjugate people with the truth that is used here. And they forge their vain emptiness and uselessness comes out in the way they want to subjugate people. So this is what I see here, that whilst the two paragraphs seem to be highlighting philosophical positions, it's philosophical positions fighting for truth. Who has the truth? And the church is trying to hold on to its mystical revelation of the truth. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the Jesuits are officially, they are the Society of Jesus, and they are a religious order of the Roman Catholic Church, founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola and 6 companions. Now, in order to cut through, so that because of time, let's understand also that the Jesuits established. So the Jesuits remember, it's an order of the Roman Catholic Church, and the Roman Catholic Church is losing power, influence. Why? Because they were being challenged by science and technology. If you remember, the critical science or scientific demonstration, if you like, that really undermined the church was the removal of the earth from the center of the universe. You recall that before the sun became SUN, the center of the universe, the Roman Catholic Church believed that the earth was at the center of our galaxy, if you like, and that all other planets, including the sun, rotate around the earth. And this was disproved scientifically.
We are now approaching.
So you can imagine
Please mind the
the
step
blow
from the train
to the power of the church, and they relied on scripture to defend their position. So there are passages in Psalms, for instance, which talks about the sun moving in the sky like a person. So the church's position was that the sun actually moves. You see, and this was all disproved. So the church was really on the back foot. So the Jesuits formed then. As you can imagine, they set up schools. They became involved in education, establishing numerous schools, and then they became known as the schoolmasters of Europe, especially in the 16th to 18th centuries. So they were like the schoolmasters. They were involved in missionary work, and they made scientific contributions as well. You see, but the problem was that, hold on please. The problem was that they were part of the church. That was the problem. So the libertines, on the other hand, were people like Descartes that we come across. The one who I told you, you all learned his graph when you were in school. All of us here who went to school, secondary school, we all learned to graph. Now graph the XY axis. That comes from Descartes. And that's why it's called the Cartesian coordinates, X and Y. All of us here studied that. That's from the French, from Descartes, from the libertines. So there was a conflict, very, very deep conflict. And you can understand the conflict. The conflict is that the church is wrong in its doctrines. In fact, some of it is nonsensical, if you like. Right? So for example, some of the sorry, I'm in the train, so there's a lot of announcements. So, and some of the doctrines that the libertines rejected on scientific and mathematical basis is teleology, which is the idea that the universe is an organic universe. Everything in nature has a purpose, a final cause. Remember what Aristotle said, that we are all that there are some human beings that are not capable of reasoning. You remember all that we looked at, and my sister Ida telling us she doesn't even believe that our leaders have any they have no interest in doing anything for us. You remember all the discussions we had. Now, so that's one. Another also that the way in which the new scientific movement was working, it was based on empiricism. In other words, it was on observations. And Aristotle and others, they relied on scripture mainly. And the scientific community at the time, if you want to put it that way, well, having none of that. And then some philosophers like Pierre Gassendi, some of the philosophers revived ancient. Remember, this is then all part of the intellectual revolution, and so they dug out some of the old teachings like atomism, you know, and so on. I mean, so basically, in the interest of time, let me just say this. So basically, there was a deep divide between the scientific community and the religious community. The religious community was led by the Jesuits because they also had established schools. They were educators, and so they didn't want to be undermined. And then they belonged to the Catholic Church. And then there were the free thinkers, or they were the independent scientists, if you like, who were not part of the state and of the church. And so that was the conflict. And that's the conflict you've all been discussing. So in the end, something had to give. And you recall, last week we talked about the French Revolution of 1789. That revolution is a result of what we are reading now. You see, because that all led to the French Revolution. And the church lost its power the monarchy lost its power. In fact, the monarchy was decapitated, and France became a republic. So the time is 10 to 8. So, Brother Pigeon, that is my summary. There is more to say, but we had parents' evening today, so I joined late.
No,
Let me just give a bit of that. All I will add, Brother Pigeon, is that what we have to consider here is, in terms of Africa, we know there is a divide between neocolonialism and those who are not for neocolonialism. Now, how is that going to play out? So that's all I will add. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Komi. You've really helped a lot by what you've shared as well, and trying to put this as well in context. Of course, Brother Carrington had also tried to bring this into limelight a bit on his thinking, but I think the question you're asking is what is also very important is how does this now play to Africa or us in this contemporary times. And also, Sanas was saying some of these philosophers of those times might have not have the whatever level of thinking or whatever reasoning or whatever the conditions by science then, and today is different. Today is a bit advanced. But again, the strife or the dialectics between the two sides, as much as there was French Revolution, but I think they still are strife up to date. In the continent, and even in individuals, like what Carrington was saying, as much as he's trying to be scientific enough in his thinking, but you take him to somewhere where you see something like a cult, this other part of him that want to be spiritual a bit and walk away from it in terms of what he finds to be a belief. Now, this is still something relevant today to Africa, if you want to put it in context, because the struggle between the church and the political class in Africa and the responsibility of intellectuals, because also we wanted to look at what is the responsibility of intellectuals towards the revolution. They are either currently seen as...
Sorry, but opinion. Can I come in? You see, what we here should be asking ourselves is, so the philosophy that we are reading and its implications for our history that General Anunnaki has been sharing with us, all that, how are we going to use that as a tool to create the kind of dichotomy that is needed for the people on whose behalf we want Africa to be reorganized, to be on our side? That for us is a critical question, because what we are reading, we have experienced it ourselves. Maybe not all of us here, because we were not old enough when the two groups were at each other's throat in the liberation of Africa. In Ghana, where I come from, we know, for instance, the dichotomy between the group that didn't want the Europeans to leave and the group that said self-government now. And it was brutal. If you look at the history in Ghana, they formed their own group called the NLM, and it was war. Right? It was war. There's no time to go into that now. So what we are reading here, we have experienced it in Angola. Those of us who know the history about the struggle for independence. In Ghana, we had violence, but not the kind of violence that happened in Angola, where there was actual war because the imperialists didn't want to leave, and so people took up arms. In Algeria, the French claimed that Algeria was part of France, and they said no. Again, there was war. There was civil war in Algeria. So let's keep all this in context. Let's not approach that this is new to us. We have experienced this as well. So right now we have to ask ourselves, what is it? How are we going to shape our philosophy now to help create the tension we need? Because there has to be tension for there to be a change. I'll pause there.
Thank you. Sir, please Senior Prince, please go ahead. If you can try to respond also to what the question Brother Kwame is throwing to the floor or to the members present here is okay as well.
Okay, thank you very much, brothers and sisters. Yeah, we know that what necessitated the French Revolution is something that is still affecting the world today, because that revolution kind of turned the old or feudal monarchical Roman Catholic hegemony into France claiming to become free, liberal, and what have you. But we know that even today they still have this issue of the church, people looking at things from the biblical point of view, or looking at things from the Quranic point of view. That is, we have people who want to look at things that way, and we have people who want to look at things through science. That is there. But then when you come to Africa, like Comrade Kwame said, yes, we have experienced that in almost all African countries. This happened. And in the case of Cameroon, for example, those who actually wanted independence were not given independence. Independence were instead given to those who did not want independence, so that the French would be working from behind. That is how it happened in most former French colonies. But then what we are experiencing today, that divide is there, but it's just that many Africans do not see it. Where you have our leaders or intellectuals that, especially those who have studied abroad in these Ivy League schools, and then they come back and are giving proposals of which they are actually paid or bribed into giving such proposals just to keep Africa weak. This is currently going on. Take, for example, the Structural Adjustment Program. When the World Bank and IMF brought it to Africa, most of the people supporting it were all Western educated intellectuals or academics. This is a problem we have. And if I can remember well, there's one Pan-African forefather who said that the revolution has to come from the rural areas to the cities, because the people of the cities actually have little or nothing to teach the people of the rural area. Because in the rural areas, they know how the society is there. They see the benefits. But in the cities, people have this individualistic mindset. So they can't really see why the country should be in a socialist, scientific socialist way. Yeah?
We are only having 1 minute to end our class, so please, let's go ahead.
Yes. So all we need to do is to sensitize Africans more to see that Pan-Africanism is what is going to move us forward. That is what is going to develop us, not listening to the so-called academics. And then, but then we also have to bring in the Pan-African academics, because despite the fact that we have these intellectuals or philosophers or academics, we have those who are Pan-African in nature and those who are Eurocentric in their knowledge. So we need to bring them in to share with us their detailed research, but then we must know the difference and we must know when they are deviating. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, comrades. I think the question Brother Kwame has put forth is a question that we still have to put it forth for the next class if we have to start the conversation in our next class, because it's a very vital question. But I want to thank everyone for this, because I remember Nkrumah says there are 3 types of colonial students. And the third category where he categorizes himself, he says, there are those who went to seek knowledge for the purpose of liberation or emancipation. And I see the struggle between intellectuals here on the basis of how they pursue knowledge for what purpose. The libertines are pursuing knowledge for a purpose of trying to challenge and either liberate the society, as the Jesuits seek the same knowledge for the purpose of maintaining a certain class in a society. And these are problems and experiences we face today. Therefore, there's a serious role that we cannot ignore here, even as we'll be going to the next class, on the role again of the intellectuals in all this discourse of liberation and revolutions. How or what role they play, and what role should they play clearly to contribute to the liberation, because there must be evangelists of Pan-Africanism that go to the masses and convert the masses to follow the revolution, but it's based on how or where are the intellectuals pushing their efforts. We cannot exhaust much on this. Of course, we just don't end. We only adjourn because our classes continues every week. I want to appreciate those who have joined us for the first time. Those who have been listening to this session, please find time to join us earlier. We happen to be starting late, almost 10 minutes late, because people come late. But we have to end in time. So if you can come earlier, as I try to open this meeting always 5 minutes earlier, please join us earlier so that you can have enough time to have this conversation we have every day. Thank you very much, comrades. I believe you've learned something. I believe you've come up with something, and I look forward to us continuing the conversation next week. Brother Kwame, I haven't checked the list, but you can remind me, what are you doing on Saturday? There's a topic. I can't grab my list now. But
He's finding his.
There?
You went off.
No, I'm saying just remind me a bit on what you're doing on Saturday, maybe for the girl that is here.
So, yeah, thank you. So, brothers and sisters, next on Saturday, we are looking at reforming relationships with international financial institutions. That's a topic for the coming Saturday, which is the 22nd of March. So I think Brother Pigeon has already said, if you can speak on this topic, please let him know so that we can put together the speakers. So,
yes.
So if I may repeat it again, the topic is reforming relationships with IFIs, that is financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. And some of us who think we should not reform, but rather destroy the relationship completely, are also free to come in and share their thinking. So, thank you very much, and let's meet on Saturday. The recordings of this class will always be available by next week, latest Tuesday. And we have other things we are doing apart from the Saturday class that is going on. There's a Sunday class on reviewing of the book by Dr. Iti. There's Tuesday class on Swahili. There's now this Thursday class, and we're also having a Pan-African library going. All these are what we're trying to do to contribute to the revolutionary struggle. Have a lovely evening, and let's meet on Saturday. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye all.